He was balancing a tray of drinks, smiling through the chaos of a packed restaurant, when his manager stormed over. "You're too slow," she screamed, snatching the tray and hurling it to the floor. Glasses shattered, wine splattered, and every guest froze, staring at the young black waiter, humiliated in front of them all. But what happened next turned the tables in a way no one saw coming. Want to know how he got his justice? They called him Jay at 24. Your old waiter with a quick smile and a knack for remembering every order, no matter how complicated. Jay had been working at La Belle Étoile, an upscale restaurant in downtown Chicago, for just 6 months. It was the kind of place where the elite dined, politicians, influencers, and corporate bigwigs sipping overpriced wine under chandeliers. For Jay, it was a grind, but he loved the energy, the tips, and the chance to prove himself. He was good at his job and the regulars adored him, but his manager, Claire, was another story. Claire was in her late 30s, sharp-tongued and obsessed with perfection. She ran the restaurant like a drill sergeant, barking orders and nitpicking every move. To her, Jay was just another cog in the machine, never quite fast enough, never quite polished enough. Behind closed doors, the staff whispered about her bias, how she'd praise certain waiters while riding others, especially Jay, for the smallest mistakes. He'd overheard her once muttering about people like him, not fitting the restaurant's image. It stung, but Jay kept his head down. He needed this job. That night, the restaurant was slammed. A private party of 20 had booked the VIP section, and every table was full. Jay was in the zone, weaving through the crowd, balancing trays, and cracking light jokes to keep the mood upbeat. The guests loved him. Some even slipped him extra tips for his charm. But Claire was on edge, pacing the floor, her eyes locked on Jay like a hawk. He could feel her watching, waiting for him to slip. It started with a small mistake. A guest at table 12 asked for a vegan option, and Jay, swamped, misheard and brought a dish with dairy. The guest was kind about it, but Claire overheard and swooped in. "Can't you do anything right?" she hissed, loud enough for nearby tables to turn. Jay apologized, his face burning, and rushed to fix it. He thought that was the end of it. He was wrong. An hour later, as Jay carried a tray of drinks to the VIP section, Claire stormed toward him. The room was buzzing, laughter and clinking glasses filling the air. Jay was mid-stride, focused, when Claire's voice cut through like a knife. "You're too slow. You're embarrassing us." Before he could respond, she grabbed the tray from his hands and threw it to the ground. The crash echoed. Champagne flutes shattered, red wine soaked the carpet, and every eye in the restaurant turned to Jay. Silence swallowed the room. He stood there, frozen, his uniform splattered with wine, his heart pounding. Guests stared, some with pity, others with discomfort. A few whispered to each other, but no one spoke up. Jay's hands shook as he bent to pick up the shards, his mind racing. Why had she done this? Why in front of everyone? He'd seen Claire snap before, but this was different. Personal, vicious. It wasn't just about the tray. It was about him. Jay's knees hit the floor as he scrambled to clean up the mess. His face burned with humiliation, but he kept his eyes down, refusing to let the tears show. The guest stares felt like needles, each one pricking at his pride. A woman at a nearby table leaned over to her friend and whispered, "That was uncalled for." But no one said it to Claire. She stood over Jay, arms crossed, her face twisted with disdain. "Clean it up and get back to work," she snapped before turning on her heel and disappearing into the kitchen. The rest of the night was a blur. Jay worked on autopilot, refilling drinks, clearing plates, forcing a smile despite the knot in his chest. The guests avoided his eyes now, as if his humiliation was contagious. Behind the bar, his coworker Mia, a fiery single mom who'd been at La Belle for years, caught his arm. "That was messed up, Jay." "You okay?" she asked. He nodded, but his throat was too tight to speak. Mia's eyes narrowed. "She's been gunning for you since day one. Don't let her break you." In the break room later, Jay sat alone, staring at the floor. He replayed the moment over and over. The tray crashing, the silence, the stares. He'd grown up in a tough neighborhood, faced his share of slights, but this felt different. It wasn't just Claire's anger. It was the way she'd made him feel small, less than human in front of everyone. He thought about quitting, walking out and never looking back. But then he thought about his mom, working double shifts to put him through community college. He couldn't let her down. The next day, Jay showed up for his shift, bracing himself for another round with Claire. But something had shifted. The staff was buzzing, whispering about what happened. Mia pulled him aside. "People are talking, Jay, the guests last night. They didn't like what they saw. One of them posted about it online." Jay's stomach dropped. He wasn't big on social media, but he knew how fast things could spread. Sure enough, a quick search on his phone showed a post on X from a guest. "Saw a manager at La Belle et Oil humiliate a waiter last night. Threw his tray on the floor in front of everyone. Disgusting. # La Belle shame." It had hundreds of likes and retweets. Jay's heart raced. Part of him felt vindicated. Someone had noticed, someone cared. But another part of him dreaded what came next. Would Claire blame him? Would he lose his job? When he walked into the restaurant, Claire was already there, her face pale as she scrolled through her phone. She didn't look at him, but the tension was thick. The other waiters kept their distance, sensing a storm brewing. That night, a new group of guests arrived. A mix of young professionals and a few influencers who'd seen the post online. They were louder than usual, watching Claire like hawks. Jay felt their eyes on him too, but this time it wasn't pity. It was curiosity, maybe even respect. One of them, a woman in her 20s with a camera, ready smile, leaned over as he refilled her water. "You're the guy from the post, right? That was so wrong. You good?" Jay managed a small nod, unsure how to respond. As the night went on, the whispers grew louder. Guests were filming, some discreetly, others not so much. Claire's every move was under scrutiny. When she snapped at another waiter, a guest called out, "Hey, chill, don't throw anything this time." The room erupted in nervous laughter. Claire's face turned red, but she didn't respond. Jay could see her unraveling, her usual control slipping. Behind the scenes, Mia was rallying the staff. "This ain't just about Jay." She told them in the kitchen. "Claire's been like this forever. We're done taking it." Jay listened, torn between gratitude and fear. He didn't want to be the center of this, but he couldn't deny the fire in Mia's words. She'd seen the same treatment. Maybe not as public, but just as cruel. The staff started sharing their own stories. Claire docking pay for minor infractions, Claire favoring certain workers, Claire making snide comments about race or accents. It was a pattern, and Jay wasn't the only victim. The X post kept gaining traction. By the next morning, it had thousands of likes and comments, some calling for a boycott of La Belle et Oil. Local bloggers picked up the story, and a few news outlets reached out for comments. Jay's phone buzzed with notifications, but he didn't know how to handle it. He wasn't trying to start a movement. He just wanted to do his job, but the guests from that night weren't letting it go. One of them, a lawyer named Sarah, had been at the VIP table. She reached out to Jay through a coworker, offering to help. "What happened to you was unacceptable," she said. "I've seen this kind of thing before. You don't have to stay quiet." Jay wasn't sure what help meant, but Sarah's words stuck with him. He started noticing things he hadn't before. How Claire's behavior wasn't just harsh, it was targeted. He thought back to the image, comment, to the way she'd overlooked him for shifts in the VIP section. He started talking to Mia and the others, piecing together a bigger picture. They dug through old schedules, emails, anything that showed Claire's pattern. It wasn't just Jay, she'd been harder on anyone who didn't fit her mold. Meanwhile, the restaurant's owner, Mr. Ellison, caught wind of the online backlash. He was an older man, rarely around, but known for caring about the restaurant's reputation. When he showed up unannounced, the staff went quiet. Claire was called into his office, and Jay could hear raised voices through the door. When she came out, her face was tight, her eyes avoiding everyone. Mr. Ellison called Jay in next. "I saw the post, Mr. Ellison said, his voice calm but firm. "I want to hear your side." Jay hesitated, then told him everything. The tray, the stares, the months of Claire's comments. He didn't hold back, but he didn't exaggerate either. Mr. Ellison listened, nodding slowly. "This isn't how we do things here," he said. "I'm sorry you went through that." The next day, Claire was on temporary leave. The staff was stunned, but the guests weren't. They'd been watching, posting, amplifying. Jay's story had become their cause. Sarah, the lawyer, connected Jay with a local advocacy group that specialized in workplace discrimination. They helped him file a formal complaint, not just against Claire, but against the restaurant's lack of oversight. It wasn't about revenge. It was about making sure no one else felt the way he did that night. But the real twist came a week later. At a staff meeting, Mr. Ellison announced that Jay was being promoted to shift supervisor. The room erupted in cheers, Mia loudest of all. Jay stood there, shocked, as his coworkers clapped him on the back. Mr. Ellison pulled him aside after. "You've got a knack for this place, Jay. The guests love you. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise." The online buzz didn't stop. The hashtag #LaBelleShame turned into #justice for Jay. Guests started coming in just to support him, leaving tips with notes like "Keep shining" and "You're the real star here." Jay wasn't used to the attention, but it felt good, like he'd taken back something Claire had tried to steal. Jay never saw Claire again. Word spread that she'd been fired, not just for what she did to Jay, but for years of complaints the restaurant had ignored. The advocacy group's complaint led to changes. New training, better oversight, a real HR system. Jay's promotion wasn't just a title. It was a chance to rebuild the restaurant's culture. He made sure every waiter, no matter who they were, felt seen. But the real shock came months later. One of the influencers from that night posted a video, a grainy clip from the restaurant's security footage. It showed Claire's outburst in full, her snatching the tray, throwing it, and walking away as Jay stood frozen. The video went viral, racking up millions of views. Comments poured in, calling Jay a hero for staying calm, for keeping his dignity. Strangers donated to a crowdfunding campaign to help him pay off his student loans. Jay, who'd always kept his head down, was now a symbol of resilience. He didn't ask for any of it, but he carried it with grace. At night, when the restaurant closed, he'd sit with Mia and the others, laughing about the chaos, grateful for the support. He'd made it through not just the tray, not just Claire, but the weight of being seen as less than. He'd turned it around, and the world noticed. What would you have done if you were Jay? Have you ever faced someone like Claire? Someone who tried to break you? Drop your story in the comments. I read everyone. And if this hit you, smash that like button and subscribe for more stories of justice and redemption. Let's keep the conversation going.